Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic. MAGA forces are determined to take this country backward.
That was President Biden last night, standing in front of a dramatically lit Independence Hall in Philadelphia. He's declaring democracy is under assault by former President Trump and the millions of Americans who voted for him. Joining me now is Oklahoma Congressman Kevin Hern. He's a member of the Ways and Means Committee. Congressman, good morning to you, and great to have you with us this morning. I want to get your take on this because the president essentially is attacking half of the country, grouping them into this extreme basket of MAGA Republicans. Most people would just say, I'm not even sure what that exactly is. And he's also accusing them of threatening democracy. Your take on this?
Well, I don't think there's any question. First of all, thanks for having me. I don't think there's any question. Joe Biden has done more to erode democracy and faith in our institutions after last night's speech than we ever thought possible. We all remember he campaigned on his ability to unify the country, that's what he was great at after 50 years in politics. And last night, what we saw, as you just stated, he just said that half of Americans, everyone that voted for Donald Trump, had no place in this country, that we're all fascists. And, you know, if we have a strong two-party system, which is how our founders envisioned us and how we should be working together, and he did more to divide us last night than ever.
You know, you stand back and look at this speech and think about the midterms and what the administration was trying to do with positioning. It's interesting to me because what's happened with President Trump recently, the FBI raid, et cetera, it's rallied the base. I imagine that his base sees a speech like this and you know, could be turned off by it, to put it mildly.
Well, if you think about the last time we saw this kind of division in our country, yeah, I think you'd have to go all the way back to prior to the Civil War, where we had, you know, the atrocities that were going on then and really did divide our country. Some would argue that we're marching in that direction now. But when you look at what they want us to join, we have to also remember that the Democrats have the White House, the Senate, and the House Representatives. And what do they do with this power? They double the size of the IRS so they can shake down the American people. They go out and have the DOJ and the FBI target political opponents. They call our parents domestic terrorists because they want to get gender identification and critical race theory out of the classrooms. And then you look at our southern border. This party has become the party of death when it comes to the number of Americans who have died from fentanyl overdose and the number of illegal immigrants who have died crossing the border. And this is their leadership. This is insane to think that if we want to push back on that, meaning the Republican Party, 75 million Americans, want to push back on that somehow we're anti-American, that we're fascist, and this has got to stop.
And I will add to that over $4 trillion in reckless spending that's put the economy in an unstable position right now. Todd?
To Jackie's point on midterm momentum, Congressman, if you look at the polls in July and August, they were not favorable to Republicans when it comes to the House of Representatives. Yes, many of them, most of them, if not all of them, still show Republicans holding on to the House. But that wave has definitely been feared that it could turn into more of a trickle if you are a Republican. I think Republicans were given two gifts in recent weeks. One, the student loan bailout that Democrats and Republicans and the heartland does not seem to like. The second gift was this speech. How do you, as a campaigning Republican, take this gift given to you by Joe Biden, these two gifts, and use it to campaign in the next 2 months?
Well, it started last night for me. I was speaking to some 700 people in my district, and we talked about the fact that what this president has done is taking and giving away money on the backs of hardworking farmers and ranchers and manufacturers and people that are out every day with a job paying their bills. And with one fell swoop of a pen, which is clearly unconstitutional, even according to Nancy Pelosi just last year, that this president has had the audacity to go out and say, I don't need Congress anymore. I can both do executive orders and spend money just like it's no tomorrow. And that's what we're seeing right now is that the parties, both parties, Democrats and Republicans, are running from this president. If you look last night, you didn't see the Senate candidate Fetterman standing there with the president in his own state. You know, that's something that people should know. The Democrats are running from this. Tim Ryan, who is running for Senate in Ohio, has been running from this. Every Democrat that's been out there campaigning is running from what this president is doing. And we need to remind ourselves that, again, they have all the power, all the levers of government to do what they want to do. And he spoke about we the people 10 times at least last night. And we the people is I, Joe Biden.
Right.
And so when you look at that, we have got to get back to what we know and work together to move this country forward.
And to expand on what you're saying on this concept of I, Joe Biden, and executive power, the Republican attorneys general are considering lawsuits against President Biden to block his student loan bailout. Congressman, that spending, the notion is that spending in this country is supposed to be approved by Congress, not by the president.
Well, again, when you look at what Nancy Pelosi has done the last 4 years that I've been in Congress, is she's circumvented all the committees of any jurisdiction on most everything. The bills have been written in her office. She has demonstrated and led the pathway for President Biden to do what he's doing. She has shown a total disregard for having restraint on spending. We've spent some $12 trillion through Democrat rule in the last 4 years. It's just insane, almost doubling our debt since it just stopped being in Congress. And for them to talk about this Inflation Reduction Act, this is a Green New Deal bill repackaged to be a Build Back Broke plan repackaged to now be an inflation reduction plan, which their own administration says it's not going to lower inflation.
Right, and they lie and they call it an Inflation Reduction Act. I always put the so-called in front of it so people really understand this has nothing to do with reducing inflation. Congressman, while I have you, in your recent op-ed, insulin price caps aren't the answer. You write, quote, if Democrats have their way, new regulations will make it harder for Americans to access life-saving pharmaceuticals such as insulin. What's the solution to bringing down insulin costs?
Well, if you go back to what the American Diabetes Association said, the biggest impediment to us getting lower insulin costs to the system, to American people, it's the Food and Drug Administration, because they're delaying after delaying their ability to get biosimilars, which are not exactly generics, but they're as close as you can get for insulin. And we have 2 coming on the market very quickly now this year that are going to lower the price some 92% by their estimates. There's another 6 that are in the process, and this is the FDA doing everything they can to drag their feet, because we all need to realize that when the market works, that means government overreach is being curtailed. And that's not what the Biden administration and the Democrats want. They want to take over our health care in America. They want to destroy the pharmaceutical companies that have produced the drugs that save Americans, our rare diseases out there. They want to control the price. They tried to control the price across the board, which would have really stopped all production of these drugs that we need. And what they've done now is they've just lowered the price in the Medicare space by price caps. But what's happening is now everybody else is going to pay more.
Right.
The real solution is to have the biosimilars out there to drive down the cost for all.
Right. And when it comes to, R&D development in this country, we've been a leader when it comes to the pharmaceuticals, Congressman. But, many people say all this is going to do is it's going to stifle innovation. It's going to stifle the incentive out there for companies to try to find cures for diseases that kill us.
Well, what they want to do is basically pick drugs that they want, meaning the government wants to control the price on. And if these pharmaceutical companies, we don't know what those are yet, and if these pharmaceutical companies don't comply, the federal government will have the power in the bill to go out and tax them 95% tax on their gross income. That means all will stop. And basically what has been said by industry leaders is that those dollars will never be realized, meaning those penalties, because pharmaceutical companies will stop producing those drugs.
Right.
And that's not what we need. That's why people come to America to get the pharmaceuticals that we have, because we have a place where you can go out and develop these and send them out across the world.
Yeah, there's a reason why it's been working. It's not to say that the system isn't somewhat broken, but maybe there's another way to approach it. Congressman, we really appreciate your time this morning. Always great to have you on the program.
Thanks for having me.